Hello guys, what we have here is the Kaboom day in Russia. It looks usual, but here is something extraordinary about this particular facility. This is the oil pumping facility of the Druzhba pipeline, which supplies Russian oil to Slovakia and Hungary. So you may see with the actual camera and the thermal camera later on that facility is absolutely no-go. Now it requires lots and lots of the time to be repaired. That means total cancellation of the oil supplies to Hungary. And Hungarian side is crying already. Peter Szijjártó, the foreign minister of Hungary, already stated that Ukraine hit the Druzhba pipeline last night. Again, supplies have been halted in the Russian-Belarus section. So yeah, they consider it the threat for their energy sector, blah blah blah. And this is the actual video which I just showed you. So you see how this war touches different countries, like for example Slovakia, Hungary, but at the same time Ukraine performs strikes on Russian infrastructure and territory of Russia. And that is how Ukraine applies its own sanctions on Russian oil and gas sector. I would say that those sanctions are the most effective.
Бензинчика. А бензинчика, видимо, нет. Слово совсем.
Yeah, that's Russia. In many of the cities, many of the regions, there is the fuel crisis because Ukraine kicked out many of the oil refineries from the normal operation. For some, Russia have to spend even years to restore the full capacity. Okay, the authorities of the occupation administration of Crimea also confirmed the terrible situation with fuel, especially right now that there are lots of the tourists coming to Crimea, despite Ukrainian strikes sometimes on that peninsula. The head of the local occupation administration, Aksyonov, said that the crisis is connected with the war. Yeah, SVO, they say, special military operation. And for the second day, Novoshakhtinsky oil refinery is still on fire. This is one of the biggest refineries out there in Russia. Allegedly, Ukraine hit it with Flamingo missile, the new one developed in Ukraine. By the way, we have more data about that missile, gonna tell you later on in this video. The fuel crisis in Russia hasn't yet touched the big regions of Moscow and St. Petersburg. However, occupied territories of Ukraine, including Crimea and also far east of Russia, they struggle really. Why is it so? Well, also because of war. Russia keeps populated regions happy, more or less, but the main priority for Putin is obviously to supply its army, so they may cut supplies, fuel supplies for their own people in the Far East, just to send the fuel to the Russian army. Nevertheless, logistics is not the strong side of Russia. It has never been, so the strikes on the Russian oil and gas infrastructure matter. Oh right, Slovakia and Hungary officially sent a letter to the European Union to guarantee the security of the oil supplies from Russia through the Druzhba pipeline. So they want European Union or Euro Commission to act and press Ukraine not to hit this pipeline any longer. What I would say that this piece of the Russian infrastructure on the Russian territory is the legitimate target for Ukraine to flatline, because Russia sells oil and for those money they purchase weapons. Yes, unfortunately not just Slovakia and Hungary from the European Union countries are purchasing Russian gas and oil, but Ukraine does everything to minimize the Russian income. And guys, this Russian war against Ukraine has all of the chances to expand further. Even Aliyev, president of Azerbaijan, recently stated that his country should be or must always be prepared for war. And judging on rhetorics coming from Russia, it's not gonna be Armenia versus Azerbaijan any longer. Aliyev warned that provocations against Baku would result in serious consequences for its opponents and reminded them that Azerbaijan now lives as a victorious state. According to him, armies are receiving new UAVs, artillery and modernized combat aircraft. Contracts have been signed for the supply of additional equipment. Turkey really supports Azerbaijan here. They're good allies, friends, but Russian propaganda stated that after Ukrainian special military operation, they might start a new one in Caucasus. As I've told you many times before, Putin wants to restore Soviet empire. He wants all of those ex-Soviet countries to bow for him, to become pro-Russian or to be actually Russia. And why Russians are so cruel towards Ukrainians in this war? Because they want to show an example to other states and other people around what it could be if you do not obey Russia's will. Just recall elections in Georgia, then pro-Russian party actually threatened people with a big billboard saying that it could be in our country if you do not support us, pro-Russian force. So we may see that this strategy of Russia actually could work. This cruelty, barbarism, but that is how Russia thinks and that is how it works. One more sign that this war is expanding towards other countries is that Russian military drone crashed and explodes in eastern Poland, the defense minister of the country mentioned. Well, it happened a couple of days ago, and it is not for the first time that something flying from Russia lands in Poland or any other NATO state. There were such cases in Romania too, but there is a weak, I would say, reaction from our Western partners on this. For them, it became the new reality, and then something flying from Russia may land on their own territory. In my opinion, to secure the lives of their own people, they should provide or apply no-fly zone over at least the western Ukraine. But we see just a weak reaction from our partners who let Russian drones actually fly to their airspace. And this weak reaction will encourage Putin for more provocations. You know, if you let those drones to fly accidentally, Russia may accidentally launch something else, and way more. Then I'll try to escalate against the Baltic states, for example, and I'm sure that it will be like that. Right, and here we have the new video of the test launch of Flamingo missile. This booster accelerates missile very fast, it goes steep up, and then the engine or booster disassembles, yeah, it drops down. Wow, such a nice video. And after it, missile flies with the help of the jet engine. It is not the pulsing engine as in FAU-1, no, this is a real jet engine which accelerates missile to very high speeds up to 500 kilometers an hour, which makes Flamingo the fastest missile Ukraine has. And about the Germany involvement in this production, guys, I cannot prove it by 100% still. From what I understand, the Ukrainian private company actually started the production of those missiles. And maybe why we see those videos in the press is because this company wants to have some sort of the contracts with the Ukrainian government. More contracts, more investments to produce more missiles. Also, the same company produces the new generation of drones they called FP1, and Flamingo is actually FP5. Well, those FP1 drones are really capable according to characteristics too, and maybe they might replace in some of the missions Ukrainian looted drones or beavers. Here we see different approach from Ukraine and Russia, where Ukraine tries to find out the most capable drones and works with many of the companies, and the Russian Defense Ministry concentrates efforts just on Shahid drone production, sometimes modernizing that platform. For example, jet Shahid drones were already spotted in Ukrainian skies. But still, Russia cannot handle the massive production of the jet Shahids. More about Flamingo, you see what Ukraine uses here. Basically, it is FAB-1000 Soviet aviation bomb, which was modernized. It is a very simple, robust solution for Ukraine because Ukraine has lots of those bombs still from the Soviet times, as well as our allies from ex-Soviet bloc, like for example Poland, Romania, Hungary. Yeah, Hungary will not supply those bombs to Ukraine, but nevertheless there are some of the ways of how Ukraine may receive those Soviet bombs. There are many around. So hundreds of the missiles could be produced easily with those bombs. What a circus show here. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un honored the memory of those soldiers who fought for Russia in war against the Ukraine. The only thing Kim Jong-un could have sorrow about is the absence of McDonald's in North Korea. Looks like for him it's the food of gods. Well, anyways, North Korea plans to send more of the soldiers. Why do they do those funeral or memory ceremonies? Just for propaganda, you know. Every sort of the regime unites its people in good events and also in sorrow. Yeah, it works for every country, especially for dictators. Just recall Russia with its celebration of the Great Victory Day. My friends, thank you so much for supporting my job on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is in the video description just below. You motivate me with that support to film more and more of the content on this channel. So thank you so much once again. And stand by for more updates today. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.